All right, guys, and we're back with part 2 of Queer Parents versus Conservative Parents. Let's get into it. Right, we're reacting to part 2 of this Jubilee middle ground video of queer parents versus conservative parents versus kids, where they bring in a bunch of people to talk about today's, polarizing issues surrounding sexuality and children. Who would ever thought I'd be saying that in the same sentence? Guys, I apologize. We're a little bit late today because I was on Friday Night Tights on Nerdrotic's channel, which you guys can go check out. We had him on the show. That video was a banger. So I went and did a stream with him and all his whole clan. So you guys can go and check that out on his channel and feel free to. Now we're going to get into this Jubilee part 2. We only got 2 questions in last time we watched this video. Now we're on to the third. And the title of this video is, Do Kids Need a Mom and Dad? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. Of course, we'll get into that today.
On to Elizabeth.
Nope. Reset.
Reset.
Look
it up.
Oh my gosh, it's getting heated
I think we all do.
already.
It's necessary for parents to have open dialogue about sex with their children.
It's necessary for parents to have open dialogue about sex with their children, and walk forward if you agree. We'll hopefully put a poll in the chat down below. You let me know if you agree. We also have Taylor here, by the way, I should mention.
Hey, for all the poll making duties, I'll be on. Happy Friday, everyone.
And we've got Cam in the producer's bay. Cam always has his mic off.
I sniffle back here, so I turn my mic down so I'm not...
Aw. At least it's a respect
Tragic.
thing. It's a respect for you guys. He doesn't want you to hear him sniffle. So as far as this is concerned, it's necessary for parents to talk about sex with their children. And I think it said openly. I think I'm going to walk forward and say I agree. As a parent, when a kid comes to you with questions about sex and sexuality, I think, of course, you should be there to answer whatever they are curious about. However, you should always look at the world through the lens that your child is looking at it in. And if your child's 5 years old, you want a 5-year-old, appropriate conversation. 10, the same. 15, the same, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think you should have an open and honest dialogue about sex with your children. I think it sounds so weird saying about sex with your children, but anyways, you guys know what I mean. But try and talk to them about it through their own lens, because I think one of the worst things that you can do is a child comes to you with curiosity and they get lies or propaganda or just not a straightforward answer from somebody that they should be able to trust. Taylor, your thoughts?
I dropped off for a second there, so you caught me putting my headphones back on after reconnecting, so I'm just going to pass on this one.
Okay, let's keep watching.
Oh no.
Most people agreed.
I do believe it's necessary, but I believe you have to do it at an appropriate age. But once they're ready, then I think you should have those conversations so that they don't have to go outside the family for that information. I never felt comfortable going to my parents at all, or my mom. I never felt comfortable going to her. I would like to create a space for my child, which I have, where I hope that no matter what happens in her life, that she feels comfortable going to me at least.
Yes.
And then I will help her, or together we'll determine if she's actually ready for the conversation, and hopefully she is.
I definitely agree with you. I think it's so important to be able to have...
Oh, why is she crying? Okay, this took a very strange turn. Hopefully we're gonna unpack that very shortly.
the dialogue so that kids feel like they can come to you and not necessarily enforcing that you have to come to me for this. One thing is like when it's much younger.
I'm really sorry.
Do you want to talk about it?
I just haven't been told I was raised wrong in a long time.
She said, I just haven't been told that I was raised wrong in a long time. For those of you who weren't here for part 1's episode, Elizabeth has 2 dads as her parents that she was raised by, gay parents. And the question was brought up, was Elizabeth missing a mother during her childhood? And a few of the conservatives said, yes, you were missing a mother. That's not to say that your parents don't love you. That's not to say that they didn't give you support and everything that a child needs to be successful and lead a good life, which she clearly has. But you're missing out on that mother-daughter bond. And clearly she's taken that to heart and said she's taken that to mean that she has been raised wrong, which I technically did not hear anybody say. And hopefully we get into that and go back and forth on that, because I don't remember hearing that. And I don't think I would agree with that statement. I don't think many of the people who said she was missing a mother would agree with that statement.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The last video, she came in with this energy of like, I have 2 dads. I'm really proud. I'm not missing anything. I hate when people say I'm missing anything. And then, for this response to come right on the heels of that, to me, it looks like, and this is again, armchair psychoanalysis, but it looks like there may be like an insecurity there that got as a sensitive spot that got touched on, and the emotion is kind of indicative of that.
Yeah, so hopefully they allow it to go back and forth, because there's not a lot of time to go through these different things, but clearly she's feeling some type of way about it, and I get it. A lot of people will take in what others say and maybe misinterpret it or take it on to be an attack. I've been known to do that on occasion. So that might be what she's doing here. We'll see.
There's just a lot of trauma associated with this. And it's not trauma for my family. It's trauma from people telling me it's wrong. I know my family is right, and I know my family is normal. I didn't know it. I didn't know my family was not normal until other people decided to tell me that.
And that was nobody else's business to say that.
No one else's business.
Absolutely not.
And this is my biggest fear for my 2 daughters. For me, I feel like I have to prepare them as much as humanly possible for that outside world that can tell you that you're wrong or that your family is wrong. Because that's one of my biggest fears.
I don't think anybody said wrong.
There we go, clarifying.
A lot of people say
I
it's
grew up
wrong.
in a less than ideal family. A less than ideal, I think, is where, as humans,
There was nothing less ideal about her situation.
No, this is what she's hearing, though. This is what she is perceiving that she's hearing.
I'm hearing it too. I'm hearing the invalidation of her family, of the structure. She got a 2-parent household right now. Most heterosexual families end up in divorce. We don't.
Also, every single screwed up person I know has a mom and a dad.
We don't end up
Every
divorced.
single screwed up person has a mom and a dad. I've met nobody royally screwed up with 2 moms and 2 dads.
That it's not evidence, it's not an argument. You can't say I just haven't met somebody who has had a problem with this before, because then what you're going to get is a bunch of people throwing examples like that at you, and it's not helpful for either party involved, and it doesn't help to validate either of your points to say I don't know anybody that's been affected by this in the way that you're saying. It's easy to get emotional during these things, and I totally get it, especially if it's something that you've experienced throughout your life, but emotion really just clouds everything and clouds all conversation here.
That's that.
And honestly, most gay kids' parents are straight. We come from y'all.
Well, they all have to. Biologically.
Right.
Well, no, not necessarily. No, not the adopted
Unless you're
kids,
but they all
other
came
queer
from a
kids.
straight relationship.
But our parents are heterosexual.
No, I'm biologically related to one of my dads. My brother is biologically related to the other, and they had us via egg donation and surrogacy. So there's still
You're a very rare case. Please. I hate when people just use like anomalies to make a point. You're a very rare case. Most people came from a mom and a dad. Most people. And most people will, for all of time, come from a mom and a dad.
biological connection in my house, and I'm glad I have that connection, but I also have one of my dads who has straight parents was adopted. And it just, biology doesn't necessarily mean anything. And I wish people would stress it less, because that's where a lot of the hate comes from is, oh, if you're gay, clearly something's wrong. If you have 2 dads, clearly something is wrong with you.
Nobody
and we
said that.
automatically assume that children like me or people like my parents aren't as good as purely because they're different.
Nobody said that.
No one said it in this room, but the world says it. And that's not fair.
So then why, if nobody said it in the room, then why this strong emotional reaction?
And everyone just take a breath. Just take a moment before we circle back to the prompt, okay? Just take a deep breath. Do we feel okay yeah? Okay. It's necessary for parents to have open dialogue about sex with their children.
I would also say that from a young age, we can talk about things that are involved with like sex ed, but not explicitly sex. For instance, like consent is a very important topic that I think should be brought up as young as possible. We mentioned before about the case of you don't have to hug your uncle if you don't want to, or hey, do you want help cleaning that mess up or something? I think those are inherently part of good sex education, but they're not explicitly like about sex.
I get what she's saying. At first I was like, what do you mean? But you're saying like, do you consent to this kid bothering you right now in class? Do you consent to this conversation? Allowing kids to know, what they want, be able to analyze their own emotions and be able to express what it is that they want at any given moment. And that in itself is consent, but it has nothing to do with sex, is what she meant there.
Growing up, I didn't have much social media, so like I never like saw this stuff, but I go on Instagram now, just so many posts, so many stories are just about all of these things about sex, consent, and it can really go both ways, right? There's extremes on both sides, but the age that it starts at, you should really just encourage your kid to you should tell them the bare minimum, the biological standard, right? There's two biological sexes, stuff happens, but really let them do their own research and encourage them to research both sides rather than just mainly
What
pushing their
age
ideas.
are you saying?
Whenever they get social media, whenever they first hear about it and they have any questions about it. So I grew up with religious and conservative parents, but they never made it clear that those two parts of my identity were the only things that were to rule my entire lifestyle. So what I mean by that is, growing up, I would hear about politics. Whenever I would ask them a question about it, they never made it clear what their stance on it was because they wanted me to explore both sides. And whenever I ask them questions, they always tell me to explore the thing first, go on Google, research, go to different sources, and then we can have a discussion once I've really been truly informed.
If we're empowering them to do their own research, they can get into the very wrong sides of doing that research. For instance, most people I know got their sex ed from porn. And if we're talking about, sex and consent, I don't think anyone in this room is thinking that porn is a great example of sex ed.
My son I definitely caught my son watching porn, and he's 14 years old, and it was a conversation. And I didn't shame him, but if this is already happening, what do I look like coming at him and reprimanding him and telling him this is a boundary or we don't do this in this house because you're gonna go to all this action? It's like, no, this is already happening. So if I'm just now finding out about it. So now there's a communication and we actually had a whole conversation about why this isn't real and why this is not okay for you. You're gonna be an adult the rest of your life, honey. Be a 14-year-old right now. And he's like, you're right, Mom. Don't worry about it again. You're probably still sneaking and watching porn, but you know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna be able to stop that. I'm gonna be able to communicate with him and do the best I can do. That's all.
Yeah, man, what an interesting situation. That's something that I ponder a lot. Like, you have a son, he's 14, 15, you catch him doing this stuff, which is exactly what she said. It's not his first time doing it, and you just caught him doing it. He's been doing it. So this is the introduction that he's gotten to sexuality. This is what he's watching. And how do you navigate that conversation? And I think in a lot of ways, she's exactly right in saying, now, okay, you've already been introduced to this. This is what you're watching. This is what you're engaging with. Let's have an honest conversation about what this is because it's already been introduced. It's a totally different thing if, a 7-year-old comes to you and says, well, Mom, what's porn? I've never seen it before, and I heard a kid at school talking about it. Then we're in for a different conversation. But you got a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old who's already watching it and already engaged with it. Whole different ballpark. Maybe I'm like, that's a conversation for Dad. I'm here if you have questions. But hopefully Dad's around.
And this is another one of those, like we talked about it with the whole situation of, my 2.5-year-old decided that she doesn't want to wear dresses. It's like the first thing you want to do is not bring shame into that and make them feel ashamed of their choices or how they feel or whatever. Because then they've got to deal with the issue, and then they also have to deal with, and dad or mom is reinforcing this idea that something's wrong with me because of this, and uniquely me. And I think if you are this parent, it's important to address the situation, but lead with love and hey, this doesn't change I'm not bringing shame into this. It doesn't change whether I love you or anything like that, but let's talk about this. I want to be your ally in just navigating the world. This is out there. This is something that everyone deals with, or that everyone has to decide how they're going to handle. And so let's develop what is your relation. Let's develop how you're going to respond to this, and I want to be an ally and a part of that conversation and maybe guide you through how I've dealt with it or frame the conversation in those terms rather than freaking out or because once you introduce shame, then they're going to cut you off, and then that they have double the problems now.
Yeah, I see people in the comments saying, like shame is a great tool to use against children. And it might be great in that it brings about the result that you think you want. And that's that your child maybe doesn't do the thing because he feels so horrible about himself. Or it's B, your child becomes really good at making sure that you don't know that he's doing that thing or that she's doing that thing. And it's more often than not B and not A. Because what shame does to people, even though it's so often used as a tool, is it tells them, oh, okay, I've done something wrong. This person is not accepting of the fact that I've done something wrong. And now I know that this is not the person that I go to if I'm feeling some sort of confusion or if I'm on the fence about whether or not something is right or wrong. Because if that thing is wrong that I'm doing, I'm going to be, the hammer's going to be brought down. I'm going to be shamed to all hell about what I've done. So now I know that dad or mom is not the person that I go to with these sorts of things. And then who is the person that you go to? Nobody. And that's why you see like super religious kids, or like a girl that I grew up with in high school. Her parents were like, you can't hang out with your friends without us in the room. There's no sleepovers. There's no anything, any conversations that you're having, we need to be privy to and we need to watch them, and shamed her for a lot of things when they caught her doing things that didn't meet their guidelines. And she graduated. She went to college, and what do you know? Like one of the craziest girls that I've ever seen, ever. And of course, that's anecdotal information, but it happens all the time. If you feel like you're being suppressed by the people around you, what are you going to do as soon as those chains are taken off of you? You're going to do whatever it is that you want, and with no education, because you had nobody to go to actually get education about maybe why something is not beneficial to you, why it might be wrong, why it's a choice you shouldn't make, and then you're done for. So shame, although a powerful tool, I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, exactly. Because shame in this context is a blunt instrument that you're using to beat the person that you're dealing with into submission, to control them, to control their behavior. And like behavior modification, just trying to impose control over someone's behavior, that's not changing their heart. That's not changing how their actual beliefs or convictions or how they're actually developing and maturing as an independent human being. You're just adding to their compounding the problems by not respecting their individuality as a person and just banging on them with shame. And they're gonna internalize that and have a more difficult time just with their self-worth. Plus they're not going to be able to get to the truth of the matter. So, and again, like that's not to say, if I believe that porn is bad, I believe it has, the harmful effects are there. And so if this happens, you want to bring the truth into the situation, but you have to balance that against like their vulnerability that they have, because they know it's probably something that I want to do in secret. It's something that's not, you're catching them for a reason. But so there's already like a kernel of shame there. So the last thing you want to do is compound that. You want to affirm, but also then, bring the truth in love, as the Bible says.
Yep. Let's keep watching.
All we can do is
See, but that's good because you told him about this stuff before it got worse.
So I have a son and a daughter. My son is almost 7. My daughter's 4. So, I don't like to keep that, like if one's showering, the other's in their room and vice versa. But one thing I guess I stepped forward for was mostly because we use the word penis. We use the word vagina. I want them to know their anatomy. I want them to know that this is what you have. This is nobody touches this, nobody sees it other than you, or like if I'm giving you a shower or helping you wipe your butt, like things like that. I learned about sex from boys being gross in class. I didn't know how anything worked, and that's kind of because, like you said, you didn't have a good relationship with your parents. I didn't have that. I wasn't comfortable asking my mom or my dad, like, what is this? They probably should have been the ones to educate me first. Probably wouldn't have became a teen parent, but...
You hear what she said last part there? Probably would not have become a teen parent. And it's okay, a little bit of that is probably, deflecting and blaming a little bit, but also how important is education as far as knowing outcomes when it comes to pregnancy? Really, really important. I don't know how many teen moms I've heard from or seen videos on the internet saying, you know what? I knew about sex. I knew that it could lead to me being pregnant. I just thought, like, you know, it's not going to happen the first time, or that there's, you know, I didn't know when the window was for that happening, or I was taught this rule that if you do this, it's not going to happen. And, you know, all of it is just like, oh, education, education, education. Something's missing.
Yeah, I only hung back because I agree and I disagree. Like, for me, it was very interesting. I have a mom and dad. My mother's a very, very Latin woman. So it's kind of funny that she was the one who I talked to about sex more than my dad. I don't think I've ever said more than 2 words to my dad up until this day about sex. So for my daughter, I almost kind of want to mirror that for obvious reasons. I mean, that might just be a better conversation for her mom to have with her. I mean, I'm willing to have a conversation, but I also feel a little bit uncomfortable at the same time. Maybe that has to do with my past. I don't know. But yeah, I think the younger people here have it so incredibly difficult and so incredibly easy just because they have everything available to them at the same time. Where like me, you, like you over there, like we have to figure stuff out from like, you know, blurry VHS tapes or like slow internet downloads and stuff like that. So it's very like I'm not jealous of you guys at all.
That's fair. That's fair to say that I might not feel comfortable talking to my daughter about intercourse.
Right.
That's completely. It was way easier for me to talk to my son about how bitches are. Like, look, you're good at basketball, you know what I'm saying? Or you're good at athletics and whatnot. Like, I know how women are going to be.
When it comes to courting, yeah, like I could talk to her probably
About how bitches are. What an interesting way to phrase that.
a lot easier.
Absolutely.
I said disagree because of the word necessary. I don't think that it's necessary. You know, everyone's watched Animal Planet. Nobody teaches the lion cubs how to have sex or what to do. I think it's ingrained in all of us. I think it's just something that is the result of evolutionary biology. My dad was a very strong masculine figure in my life, and he was always there for me. But I never had the birds and the bees talk. I never had it. I went through puberty. I felt all the things that young boys feel going through puberty. I used my eyes and I looked around the world. I talked to my friends like curious kids do, and we figured it out. And we kind of knew what was going on. But something you said actually made me think and almost reconsider if I made the right choice. And that was about pornography. Because this is a very big issue, and it's very pervasive in our society today. The average age of first exposure to pornography in this country is 11. And some social scientists are saying that it's getting younger every year. To keep people viewing, to keep the dopamine hits coming to these viewers, these young viewers, it's escalating behaviors. It's rape, it's incest, it's aggression. It is these horribly violent behaviors that they're learning for the first time. You know, by 18 years old, it's over 90% of young boys have seen porn and 60% for young women. And that is something that we have to recognize. I think it is good to have some discussions about this. But I also think that this ties back to why it's important to have a two-parent home, because it's not just about telling your kids what is right. Kids are very visual learners. And so when they see your mother and father interacting with each other in a loving, nurturing way, they internalize that. They see that, and they in turn go out and they treat other people like that, whether that's their girlfriend or boyfriend. And so that's, I think, one of the big values of having a two-parent, two-sex home.
I think being
Most of what was just said there, I agree with. I don't agree with just, you know, maybe, not that he endorsed this, but not having the conversation with your kids and then allowing kids to just figure it out themselves by like talking to one another. But the pornography, certainly agree with. The talk about two-parent households and being a sort of reflection for your kids of what relationships are supposed to look like is so important. You know, we talk about girls with daddy issues and all this stuff, and as funny as it is to say these things, it's very much true. If you grow up without a father in the household and you are not watching the way that a man is supposed to treat a woman and a woman who is supposed to treat a man that is full of respect and love and dignity, what is it that you accept when you go out into the world of dating yourself and you are looking for a partner, man or woman? It doesn't really matter at this point. If real, good, loving, respectful, dignified relationships are not shown to you as an example as a child and in your formative years, you will not find real, respectful, loving, dignified relationships when you go out into the world to seek that out. And there's no question of whether or not that's the truth. You'll see it with women all the time and men all the time that just have no idea what it is to be in a relationship, and then things become toxic and abusive, and you accept far less than what it is that you deserve, and it's just an endless cycle because there was no models for you.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. And, when Aldo said that he didn't have the talk, my antenna went up of like, oh, that's kind of strange. But to your point and to his point, it just underscores the notion that having a healthy example, having a healthy environment that you're growing up in, having a healthy situation as a young person is going to have a much bigger impact than any singular talk will, as far as like how you're navigating your sexuality. The examples that you have before you and the values that you're taught will help be your guide, even in the absence of a talk like that. So it is interesting because I think maybe sometimes we put so much emphasis on, well, if we don't sit them down and communicate this, there's a lot of probably dysfunctional households who do have the talk, and their kids end up in crazy issues with their sex lives, and they're in crazy unhealthy situations despite having had the talk. So I think that just underscores the example of having a healthy family dynamic for sure.
100%.
Honest, because even being conservative, I think we can be a little hypocritical, like we're so perfect and we have this perfect family, but it's like, no, your mama was a hoe. Yeah, your dad used to sniff coke, so we're not perfect, and just being honest and transparent and seeing, certain things in our children and being able to address those things in a timely manner. So I don't think that it's necessary for my kids' age to talk about sex. And I would rather them just for now see the intimacy between a mother and a father before I drop that ball on them. So
100%.
Children should strive to meet their parents' expectations.
Children should strive to meet their parents' expectations. I mean, it's just a blanket statement. It depends on what the parents' expectations are. You would assume that parents want what's best for you. My expectation for my child as far as their lives, that I hope that they wake up every day and are approaching life in a way that makes them happy, makes them healthy, and makes them prosperous in whatever way is important to them. I don't think my child has to meet a certain standard as far as money is concerned. I don't think my child needs to meet a certain standard as far as you need to have this sort of occupation. I want a happy, healthy child that is hopefully, trying to uplift those ideas in their lives in whatever way that makes sense to them. So if that's a parent's expectation, then sure, strive to meet your parent's expectation. But if your parent is like beating you over the head saying you need to be a doctor and a lawyer and you need to be it now, and then I don't know how hard I would strive to meet that expectation. It's all about what the expectations are and where they're coming from, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone knows the stereotypical dad in the stands at the basketball game that's like screaming at their son, even though he's the star, and it's never good enough. And in that case, so no, that's not the type of expectations that children should be pressured to meet necessarily. But, I think about my parents and like growing up and if I came home with C's on my report card, it was like, well, that's, let's talk about this. This is an issue. And there was an expectation that, hey, we believe in excellence and that's a value that we hold. And why are we falling short of that? Did you spend too much time playing video games and not doing your homework? And, and then it just putting forth that expectation of like, hey, we're going to be academically excellent and do what we need to do to get there. Right. And that I'm glad for being held accountable to those types of expectations. And I don't think that was an unhealthy thing. So everything's, I guess, in balance, and it's a two-way street.
Right. Okay, who's walking forward? It's a weird statement. I get people are walking forward, but it's weird.
Right, like that's a valid question. What are those expectations? Do we expect our kids to be rocket scientists as soon as they're born? Probably not. If it's like good, upstanding citizens who love and respect their family and their friends, I think so.
There
and
you
I'm
go.
sure there are some children of immigrants here who probably have a very high standard expected of them from the day that they were born or the day that they moved to this country.
And that's one thing I wish Asian American households changed.
We
should always be expecting improvement. I think that's the one thing that parents should always be putting on their kids. Thing is, I was really bad at math. I did not learn how to add positive and negative numbers until late 8th grade, which is really, really bad, okay, especially for an Asian. But the thing is, it doesn't matter where your kid starts. You should always be encouraging them to improve. You don't set quantitative standards for them, saying, get an A on this, get a B on this. What you should be encouraging is, oh, you got a C? Try to get C+, B. small steps are what gets your kid there.
I don't want to but raise a child that is reckless. Like, okay, well, you have the freedom, be yourself, express yourself, do whatever you want. And then, she comes home, 16 and pregnant. I'm like, you did this and blah, blah, blah. Well, Dad, you didn't tell me anything. So the expectations isn't to be perfect, but just take a little bit of the things that she's learned, that they've learned from their mom and dad and utilize them in their life to the best of their abilities. And if they can do that, I'm happy with it.
Right.
My parents.
Really true.
Yeah, it's very, very true. I've been watching this show called The Parent Test, and it's on Hulu. For those of you who want to check it out, but they bring in all these different parents, these couples that have different parenting styles, and sort of analyzed their kids and how they cope with these different parenting styles. And there's an Asian set of parents that are, engaging in that tiger mom and dad helicopter parenting with their daughter. And she's a really young kid, and she, plays instruments, and she's really good at math, and she's really good at reading, and she's good at everything on a piece of paper. But as soon as they gave the child a moment to reflect and make choices of her own, she wanted to, play a little game by herself. And when her mother and father tried to go, oh, well, if you want to play a game, we'll play a game with you since it's your day, she went, nope. I want you to be as far away from me as possible, and gave them a task to go and do, and said, go do this task, and I want to make sure that you do it right. And I mean, that's clear evidence of how that lands with children when you set the expectations far too high for them. They might go on to meet that expectation, and you can be super proud of this quantified thing that you've set forth for them. But deep down, the child's like, damn, I wish I just had parents, that expect something good from me, but not the world and not absolute perfection. Can really weigh on a child, even that young.
Style, I feel, is, I would say, strict, but it's not strict. Although my children aren't allowed to be exposed to certain things, they still have an amazing way of life because they get to do things with their mother and father who are actually present while they're in their presence, instead of scrolling on social media and ignoring the child, when the child could be needing you more than you think. So I pride myself on being as present as I can and setting that strong foundation for my children.
I think it's also important to teach your kids that the expectations you're setting for them and those goals that you're setting for them isn't for you, it's for them. And that's something really important that my parents taught me, was that here are the goals, here's what we expect out of you, but at the end of the day, your successes are your own and your failures are your own. And one day, mom and dad aren't going to be here, and you're going to have only yourself to look to for your accomplishments. And so it's setting the goals and setting the bar, but then making them realize this is all you. The ball's in your court, and your life is in your hands. It's not in ours.
The expectation 100%. That I have is just they're the best person that they could be. And I think that's the same for every parent. I mean, that's the goal and the wish, that your child is happy and healthy and content of who they are and what they're doing. And of course, I'm going to push them to take the next step, and I'll always push them. But, I think that expectation is a valid one.
I agree with a lot of the stuff you guys were saying, but the reason I didn't fully step forward was I immediately thought of my parents. And my parents both grew up in conservative homes and were told that they should, the whole goal was to go to college, get a wife, and have kids. If my parents met the expectation that they were gonna get married and have a wife and have kids, one, they might have killed themselves and not been here today. Two, I definitely wouldn't have been here, my brother wouldn't have been here. So it can't be the end all be all to meet your parents' expectations.
My parents are immigrants from India, and their expectation for me is to accomplish the American dream, to blend into white society, to blend into rich American society.
White society. I'm just gonna give that look.
They placed me from the age of 5 in a all-boys school until the age of 15, and their expectation was for me to blend in. I'm sorry, I can't meet that. I'm a woman. I'm not going to meet your expectation of going to an all-boys school. I don't think that's me doing something wrong there. That's me just living my truth. But there's other expectations that I think are very appropriate for them to have me meet. They want me to go to a good college. They want me to succeed and be happy and accomplish my dreams. And I think those are all wonderful, but I think it's not so black and white.
Okay, so basically everybody agrees on this one. We'll do one more.
Elementary schools should teach students about sexual orientation and gender identity?
Oh, okay, absolutely not. Not walking forward. I'll stay back for this one. You guys know that. We've made that pretty clear on this show, that elementary schools have no place teaching kids about sexual orientation and gender identity at all. Although I am curious to see who walks forward.
I don't think they should teach like queer theory or like college level gender classes, but I think they should be taught that these kinds of people exist in the world, and you will grow up in a world where you need to love and respect these people.
Yeah, for me, that like if we're talking specifically elementary school, for me that just looks like having a book in the classroom that is about a two-dad family, or is about someone discovering that they like to wear dresses, and then maybe that disagrees with what they were born as, you know? Just something like...
You see how those two things are very different? A book with two dads in it, and then a book that says, oh, well, if I don't wear dresses anymore, maybe that is in incongruence with my gender identity.
A children's book, or just some kind of picture on the wall that represents that. It doesn't have to be anything beyond that that's not age appropriate. You know, this doesn't involve gay sex education or hormone therapy, or like, if we're talking like elementary school kids, it's just representation, like just putting it on everyone's radar that those people are out there.
At its core, it's not about you have to agree with this and this is an agenda. It's about you can agree with this, you can disagree with this, but you need to respect it.
You know, growing up, I didn't have those books. I was questioning myself if I'm normal, quote, or if I'm, you know, if there's something wrong with me. Why do I have these feelings? Is this correct? Because I never had a conversation with my parents. My parents are straight. My whole
All of this, all of what they're saying can be true, and they can have felt these things and gone through these things. The question becomes, is it the job of your elementary school, which more often than not is a government-funded institution that kids are going to, public schools? Is it the job of an elementary school to teach kids or have conversations or even show different sexual orientations and gender identities? No. It's not.
Family is very conservative, so it was really difficult for me to accept myself because I didn't see the acceptance anywhere else.
It's the exact same thing as different cultures, different religions. It's just another diverse area that you need to be exposed to.
And it's like me being okay with schools being taught heterosexual relationships. Like, I'm okay with.
Why? Why would there be teaching heterosexual relationships to elementary school kids? I'm pretty sure I want to send my kid to school, and then it's like, here's what we're doing in math. Here's what we're reading. Here's what we're writing about and what they're learning. Here's what they're learning as far as science is involved, and then we'll hand your kid back to you. If you want to have social, political, cultural conversations, you can do that with your kid on your own time. That's for you to do. It is not the job of your school. It really is not.
That's something part of the world, of course. Like,
I didn't get any education from it from school. And, you know, kids use like, that's gays. Like, you're gay, like as a derogatory, you know? So for me, it could be as simple as like, this girl has two dads. My kids have two moms. Simple.
Is it Brittany? Yes. Okay, so you made a statement just now that where you said you think it should just be like this exists and not go any further. So I think my problem with the school system teaching our children these things is that it doesn't just stop there. And also, what if your boundary is different from her boundary, from his boundary, from everybody's boundary is a little bit different, right? As parents.
Absolutely.
So I don't think the schools understand that. And I don't think government schools really should be raising our children, which they are now, right? You know, we should be really raising our own children. And if we have to put our children in a public school, hopefully they're learning reading, writing, and arithmetic, and the social things, and the cultural things, and the religious things that are valuable to each one of us should come from inside our household.
Right. Like they mentioned religion. I don't want my child being brought to school and being read the scriptures of any religion unless they go, you know, to middle school, high school, and they want to take like an elective course or something like that in a specific religion, be it anyone. I don't care. I I don't want that either. So I don't want heterosexual sex being talked about. I don't want gender identity being talked about. I don't want religion being talked about with my child, because guess what? That is your job as a parent. That is what you get to do.
Yeah, it's the same conversation of the separation of church and state, but that applies to gender identity. Just like this is the same logic that they use to say, oh, we just want to talk about American history and tell kids about the real state of American history. We've been teaching real American history for years in schools, but we're not teaching this critical race theory ideology where you teach kids to see themselves as oppressed or oppressors based on the color of their skin, and believe in that America is a fundamentally white supremacist country. And like, it's the line gets crossed when you are teaching someone how to think, or teaching them what to think rather than how to think. Sorry. And when you have a whole, predetermined worldview about how to think about sexuality, how to think about gender, and what all those things mean, what your feelings mean, that's going beyond just teaching them about their biology or just teaching about them about the existence of people who choose different lifestyles or people who live differently than maybe they do. That's a different level. Once you're telling them that, hey, no, this whole worldview that people who embrace gender identity, that is a valid worldview, implicitly you're teaching them that, and that there's so many other things baked into that goes along with it, that it constitutes an entire worldview. And now you're fundamentally teaching a religion in school, and it's crazy that the same people who 20 years ago were freaking out if you were saying that if there's prayer in schools or teaching creationism or something like that, now they're have nothing to say and not holding the same energy when it comes to these radical ideas and radical ideologies being taught in classrooms.
Yep, 100%. They do not hold the same energy whatsoever. And the best thing that you can be on these arguments is consistent. Be consistent. We're not saying we want heterosexual sex being taught to elementary school kids either. It's just...
My approach with parenting is to be very loving, very tender, a very good role model. Some people would say I do some attachment parenting because we still sleep in the same bed, but really it's for a number of reasons, and one being safety, and two being it's more fun than being across the house from my daughter when we're the only two people in the house. We just have a very tender, loving relationship. I wanted to make sure that I cultivated that in my relationship with my child, because I felt like I grew up without that tenderness and that love and that security in my household. So I wanted to make sure that I provided that for my daughter, no matter what.
You said, I'm so sorry to keep bringing this up, I don't want to trauma bond or anything, but you didn't have a good relationship with your parents. You weren't able to go and talk to them about sex or your period or things like that.
Correct.
Where was the best place to get that information other than...
Not a government-funded school. Girl, come on.
School, sex ed. For you.
That's a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. I wish that my parents were open and communicative. I had a similar situation to you. And so I ended up learning it from my friends. So friends and magazines and VHS tapes, somebody mentioned, you learn about these things other ways, but still it should come from the family, I believe.
It should.
It should come from the family. Because I can almost guarantee that every single person here, and anybody who's a parent or just has a parent, we all have a different idea of what we want our children to learn and not learn about these particular social constructs and sex in general.
We exist. That's the thing, we exist.
Is sexual orientation a construct?
I want to add on to that.
No.
So I agree.
Well, you could say, men who are actually women also exist, and people would say, in theory you do, because you're saying that's what you are, but I don't agree with that, and I don't want my kid being taught that. I've always said a simple solution to this is when schools are planning to have these conversations, they should send letters home to parents and allow them to opt out of these conversations. But again, these are government-funded institutions. This is not conversations that they should be having in the first place, which is why school choice is going to be such a big thing, where parents are hopefully in the future able to take control of their tax dollars and where they go as far as public education, and allowing their children to go to a school that fits their needs. And if you want to fit it to an ideological bend, then by all means, then go and do that. But parents should have the choice about what their kids are being injected with as far as information.
With a lot of what you guys were saying when you guys are up here about representation. We should be teaching our kids that people of different sexualities, family types, they exist. But when you have one entity, one curriculum, one school, one government, when you have only one entity teaching a thing that can go both ways in a lot of different directions, there's a lot of room for bias. Like, I want my kids, when I grow up, I want them to know that these different things exist, but in school, it's just so hard to regulate what's going on. And I see news stories all the time about these children's books. There's one book about teaching, I don't know the name, but it's about a girl exploring her sexuality. And in the book, it literally says, her friend said, maybe you should try tasting your vaginal discharge to see if you like it or not. And the thing is, nobody's advocating for this stuff, at least I hope not. But do you see, it can get out of hand so quickly. So
That's understandable.
When it's hard to regulate.
But again, in schools, it is curriculum, so it wouldn't be anything outside of.
But it was being taught in the curriculum.
But there is. So what do you do with the hundreds of examples now that parents have of this going way too far? Literal pornography being shown to children. And even if it's not pornography, things that they don't agree with being taught to their kids. What do you do with that? So clearly they are going out over their skis, and they are not doing a good job at regulating these conversations. We saw a video that Project Veritas put out of a dean of a school talking about, and this is crass, cover your ears if you're a child, I hope you're not watching this, talking about, circulating sex toys around the classroom and teaching children how to use lube and insert things and all this different stuff. Clearly, this is very difficult to regulate.
Yeah.
Like the students are being
these books are
students
in
were
the classroom.
I think some teachers be wilding out and bringing in their own personal stuff that's not supposed to be in the curriculum. That shit sounds
absolutely
wild.
not.
Like, that sounds wild.
We forget that, we talk about, the school system and all that stuff, but we forget that these teachers are people too.
A lot of these teachers are my age, they're young.
Exactly. So my daughter, when she went into kindergarten, her teacher was amazing, great. She loved my daughter, treated her very, very well. But the first time I went I think it was back to school, not a parent-teacher conference, there was literally, the whole classroom was surrounded with rainbows. And I'm like, rainbow pencils, rainbow ABCs, rainbow. I'm like, okay, we need to know our colors. They need to know their colors. That's cool. But it went from like, okay, you're teaching them to, okay, what is this? Like, I don't care if you are gay or whatever you.
Was she a gay educator too?
No. She was married, had kids. I don't know if her kids were or anything like that, but it just was like, what are you trying to do? It just felt weird. I think
have to be gay to like the rainbow?
No, absolutely not.
No.
But I mean, for a 50-year-old woman to have 1,000 rainbows in the classroom when I grew up, and there was maybe 1 or 2 or 3.
Seems a bit excessive.
What's
the fact that it was thought that because there was rainbows in the classroom that was pushing agenda to these kids is just ludicrous to me. I mean, to think that a queer person, whether they're a parent or not, has a particular agenda to push.
I wish I had like a Libs of TikTok compilation of just all the teachers with their pride flags and their BLM flags and asking kids to worship them and say the Pledge of Allegiance to their BLM and pride flags. It's very much something that is going on. I love that they're saying I would disagree with that, and I don't think that's the right thing to happen, but it's happening. So now that it's happening and we know that it's happening and we've acknowledged that, what would you like to see going forward? And it's probably teachers not having this conversation based on your own reaction to something like this.
And also, how would he react to a teacher that had a room decorated with crosses on every wall and Bibles everywhere, or, the Islamic crescent and moon and, prayer mats and everything like that all over the place? Would you hold the same energy that, this is just harmless, innocuous stuff? But it's this, my belief is not a belief. It's just reality. And that's what they continue to just fail to distinguish between just the simple, hey, here's the fact of the matter of fact things that apply to universally to every human being. We can talk about those. Some people experience same-sex attraction. Some people choose to have a life partner of the same sex. Those are just observations about material reality. But what you believe about that same-sex attraction, adopting it as an entire identity, becoming a part of the LGBTQIA community and becoming an advocate and, embracing all of the different things that come along with that now you're getting into the beliefs territory, you're getting into the ideology territory. And we're in a time where people don't realize that they're their beliefs are just that. They're beliefs. They don't apply to everyone necessarily. What you believe about your sexuality does not necessarily apply to every single other person on planet Earth. It's a belief, and it's assigned meaning to something that you've experienced, and other people experiencing the same things and might interpret them differently. And so you have to leave room for that in a pluralistic society. And when you do not, and when you apply your view and teach your beliefs as fact in the classroom, that's indoctrination.
100%. Like, think of one simple sentence, like, Erica was born a boy, but is now a girl. You teach that to a room of 25 plus kids, or however big classrooms are now, and one kid who's raised by conservative parents goes, it's not possible. A boy cannot be a girl. Another one says, oh, well, my parents say that boys can be girls, and Erica is in fact actually a female and actually a woman. Another one says, well, yeah, I believe in gender dysphoria, and that's something that, that boy actually went through, but he's not a girl. There would be 1,000 different interpretations of that sentence, but no, you've just slapped your scientific badge on it and said, no, this is scientifically true. A boy can be a girl. And now you've just taught an entire class of children that exact statement. It's tantamount to religion. It really is.
LGBTQ community on other people is just ridiculous. And it triggered something in me, and I bit my tongue during that time.
When I was in 5th grade, I had a gay teacher. We all knew he was gay. We all loved him. And I also had a classmate with 2 moms. And the teacher recognized and said, this student has 2 moms. That's perfectly fine. We're not going to go any further than that. Recognizing and seeing the student and telling them that they're safe here. The problem today is what you were talking about, is that it's not just recognition, it's almost indoctrination. It's taking it past just showing people that, yes, you exist and I recognize you. I took sex ed in 5th grade too, and it was very simple. It was the boys went in one classroom with the male teachers, and the girls went into another classroom with the female teachers. And we talked about the anatomy. We could ask questions about sex and questions about puberty. And other than that, that was kind of it. But now across this country, you're seeing these types of books that aren't just talking about the biology and the anatomy and teaching kids about procreation. It's talking about pleasure. It's pornographic material, and that has no place in the classroom. And unfortunately, we're almost having to step back and have no sex education, which we want sensible sex education, because people are taking it so far. Mm-hmm. And my question to those people that agreed is, why do you not think that parents can sufficiently and appropriately determine how and when they talk to their kids about sex? And why are these teachers so eager to talk to other parents' children about sex and gender ideology? I've literally traveled the country reporting on this indoctrination, on the drag queen story hour, on the transition closets, on the coming out day. And whether or not you agree with those, that's fine if you agree with them, but you have to also agree that your child is in a classroom with parents that feel very strongly about those issues, and that has to be left to the parent. It is not the teacher's job to say, today's coming out day, or to say that you can be called by this pronoun or this pronoun, or you can go in either classroom to talk about this anatomy or this anatomy. It's just not your job.
When it comes to pronouns, I feel like that teacher is creating a safe space.
What was that?
I said he nailed it.
Oh, yeah, he totally.
From him. Nice job, Aldo.
Totally nailed it. And like, another question this brings up for me, and this one we'll close out, we'll go into super chats, is like, if we are spending so much time debating whether or not you should talk to my child about sexuality and gender identity, what are you spending the rest of your time doing in these classrooms? Like, what are my kids actually leaving having been taught? And if you're looking at, the rates of graduation now, if you're looking at how kids are performing, it's not good. They're not doing well. I think Biden just recently talked about tacking on another 2 years of education onto, our current government funded system. Are you crazy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're not doing that. I'm not giving you another 2 years to talk about whatever you want with my child. Not happening. And if this is what is consuming the minds of teachers in today's education system, your kids certainly aren't coming out of the classroom learning math and reading and writing and science. It's just, and if they are getting science, they're getting whatever they call science. It's just wild.
And you couple that with lowering standards for everyone, for equity and all of that. It's just become public education has sadly become a joke.
It's a nightmare. Yeah, I'm like, I got to homeschool or find a really good private school for my future children because this is not working for me. This is not it. Let's read some super chats. Sup, my dude says, it's amazing to me how difficult it is for parents to tell their children the truth. Babies are made and delivered by storks. Why is that so taboo? I wonder, there's still got to be a few parents out there still teaching that to their children. And I love to see how those kids turn out. Maybe just fine. Maybe they figure it out along the way. Alan Sanchez, thank you for your super chat. Schools should not be teaching gender identity if many school children are failing grade levels behind on reading and math. Priorities, people. Just what we said. 100% agree with you, Alan, because look, they are failing. So clearly our priorities are not set in place. And if they are, we need to restructure them because kids are not doing well and they're not coming out of the American education system being highly educated. And we are failing in comparison to other countries. So something has gone awry here. And you best believe those other countries are loving that that's happening and cheering it on. Feeling Dangerous 113 says, any thoughts on the infighting in the right-wing media sphere? Tim Pool said he might retire. You know what? I don't follow this. I followed the Daily Wire and Steven Crowder thing, and then I just went, I'm so over this. It really is not of any concern to me personally. And I think the infighting is wasted. It's useless. It doesn't mean much. I mean, we're all just human beings here talking about our opinions and our thoughts. And some people could handle that. Some people can't. I don't think Tim Pool's going to retire anytime soon. I will put that out there. But yeah, I don't keep up with it. I must say, I just tune that out.
With MILF Manor out there, who needs more salacious drama? I mean, let's be honest.
Too consumed with MILF Manor. Ruth Ann Amsden, thank you so much for your super chat. You are going to be an amazing mom. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much, Ruth. I really appreciate that. I hope so. I hope I don't fail my kids, which is the silver lining of this video here, even though we have so many people with so many different opinions, is that they are all trying to do what's best for their children, we hope. And that's very important. I'm doing great, the podcast. I'm Mike from the Jubilee episode. I was going to give my answer to the question. Oh, hey, Mike. You're very reasonable, I will say. You mean you're going to give your answer to this question in the video? Or you were going to drop it in the chat down below? I'm confused. But you've been very reasonable so far. I'll click play just in case you're saying you're going to give your answer in this video.
Space for that child in case they do come home and they cannot come
That's
out
what
to
it
you
comes
guys.
down to. It's creating safe spaces for the children that aren't like your
I
children.
didn't mean to point you guys
Honestly.
out, but you both are very religious.
Right.
And I personally come from a very religious household. No offense, but I am uncomfortable as hell, being
Around Christians.
not necessarily Christians, but people
Catholics.
that...
We can be pretty tough.
No, I don't mean to make you guys feel
I understand
uncomfortable.
what you're saying because it's a two-sided coin.
Absolutely.
It's like
Well, it's a convenience to be Christian. I'm going to be Christian
you go.
of the old covenant and not know what Christianity really means on the new covenant. And I know Christianity because I went to a ministerial school for 3 years. So you want to talk about the Bible, we can talk about it. But LGBT is not even talked about in the new covenant where Jesus Christ came and washed away my sins. And I'm a Christian.
Pause, because we do have to move on. I want to hear from Mike.
Oh,
well, no, I was just going to say that my wife and I plan to homeschool for a multitude of reasons. Specifically, we don't want the state involved in our child's education. There are a bunch of subjects we don't even think should be taught to begin with, like earth science. What the hell is that all about? But to point to Aldo's point, one of the reasons why, especially recently, why we decided this was because we went to our local school district's library, and those books absolutely exist. And we were told by the librarian that an 8 to 12-year-old can take those books out without their parents' permission. And these books, they're kind of like comic booky types, some of them are, but some of them have extremely pornographic descriptions. Some of them have visual aids. Some of them talking about, hey, try a blowjob, see how it makes you feel. Some of them talking about fingering yourself. I'm absolutely not open to having my daughter look at that stuff, let alone even hear about it from other kids. And second of all, with the teachers in the classrooms, I feel like there is a larger subset of teachers who seem to have an agenda. This is just what I see optically. and it's just not something that I'm comfortable with. So.
Of course. I mean, if you are a teacher who's consumed with the idea of injustice and bigotry, and you think that everybody's discriminating against you and is out to get you, and the world is still unaccepting, and you have a golden opportunity and a golden parachute flies right in front of you, and that's the parachute of 25 young, moldable minds sitting in front of you every single day, what are you going to do? Are you not going to try to rid the world of the bigotry and discrimination and hatred that you see in it every single day? Are you just going to be silent about that to the young children who are going to go out in the world and one day be future leaders and adults? No, you're probably going to talk to them about your agenda. And I will say that's a recent phenomenon. Like when I was in school, I think it was very taboo for teachers to talk about anything in regard to politics, ideology, even who they were married to. I'd be shocked to find out one of my teachers was married. I'd be like, what? You mean you kiss another man? Oh my gosh. And the whole class would freak out because that was not a conversation to be had in the classroom. That is not what teachers are for. They are supposed to go about their business, teach you what they were hired to teach you, and nothing more and nothing less. So I completely agree as far as that is not the job for the teacher. We might disagree on the earth science point, but I'll allow my kid to be taught earth science. Last super chat here, let's see, is from, wait, I thought I had it. Oh, from Spyro Bogdanos. I hope I said your name right. You make me happy. I wish Cam would speak more. Cam, speak more.
I'll try. My mic's always muted though.
Cam must not want to speak. He subconsciously turns off his mic every single day.
Told you I'm sniffling over here.
He's sniffling. Sorry. Cam has been sick. Wish him well in the comments down below. Guys, that is the show for today. Hope you enjoyed. Drop your thoughts on some of the subject matters that we talked about today. Should your child strive to meet your expectations? Is it necessary for children to have an open discussion and dialogue with their parents about sex at any given age? And should elementary schools be teaching kids about sexuality and gender identity? Drop that in the comments down below. Also, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we post a new video for you guys and every single time we go live. Also, check out Friday Night Tights on Nerdrotic's channel. I was just on his stream today. Had a fun time with their gang, and leave a comment there for them as well. Thank you so much for watching. Plus, sign up for our email list / newsletter, which is in the description down below. You'll get little updates and blurbs personally written by me. Also, updates as far as all the content that we've created throughout the week so that you guys can check that out at your leisure. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. Have a fantastic weekend and behave yourselves at your Super Bowl parties. Stay hydrated.